And testing the audio as well. And testing the audio as well. All right, I'm good. Hey, Max. Which Max is this? Hey, there's Thelma. Howdy. Awesome. Max and Thelma. Hey, Thelma, I'm going to make you a moderator. Is that okay? Will you respond in the chat to me real quick if you're okay being a moderator? I reached a milestone and got my first troll who entered my live stream and was saying crap. So rather than me dealing with it, I'm just going to, Thelma, if you see somebody here who's misbehaving, you can just boot them from the chat. Cool. All right, Thelma, I just added you as a moderator. Excellent. Cool. Max, you're welcome to hang out. This is the intermediate class session, so you don't have to be here, but you are most welcome to stick around. We're going to be drawing from this head and talking about working in color, balancing color, and all of that. So buckle up, I guess. All right, it's 1 o'clock. I'm going to go ahead and get rolling. I'm going to do today's just a little bit differently. I think maybe I've started one like this before, but all right. So Thelma, will you give me another comment? Thelma, you should have a blue wrench next to your name. I don't know if you see it, but I will. And if that's the case, then you are a moderator for my whole channel. So anytime I'm live streaming and you're on, I think it's for more than just this video. I think you can, you'll be moderator in charge. Cool. Max will be around. All right. So this is the reference image that I've got for this drawing. Just adjust mine. So we did bearded redhead guy last time. We'll do this female portrait today, and then we'll have a different one tomorrow. Excellent. Thelma, I see it too. So you're now in charge. Don't abuse your power. No. All right, and then we'll have a different head tomorrow morning as per the usual, and then you'll have one of the three that we've done by Sunday, along with the critique, and you know the drill. All right, so I am going to do this one slightly differently than the last one. I'm going to start this one with I'm on gray paper. This time I'm going to start it with a Prismacolor colored pencil. Just to block things in and sort of get things laid out where I want them. I'm going to be very light-handed with this pencil because I don't want to press in. I don't want to develop a surface that's glossy and it doesn't want to take the pastel very well. So before I get too far along, I question the wisdom of using it to start with. As long as I'm light-handed, I'll be fine. If I get a little too excited and put a little too much of this relatively waxy colored pencil down, the dry pastel is going to have difficulty going on top of it. But fortune favors the bold, so I'm going to move forward. All right. I think I'm going to do this one kind of large. As before, when I'm doing a head gesture, I kind of like to map out where things are going to go in a head before I really get too invested in like the gesture portion of it. So I'm just kind of I guess maybe starting with what I might consider an envelope or something, just a big basic frame that encompasses, more or less what the head's going to be doing. All right, so I've got like chin somewhere. It might be too light for you to see on the video for now. I've got chin somewhere down here. Forehead, I might just run the hair off the top of the page. I kind of want the face on this one. I want to take up some real estate with it. Before I get too much further, I can ask myself about the size of what I've got so far, like side to side, top to bottom. What's the cheekbone to cheekbone versus chin to forehead situation in the model? One of those goes once and like a half. Got to step back because my measuring device is too short. One of those goes one, and I feel good. If anything on this, I'm set to stretch a little bit. And if I know myself, I tend to squash things. And so the stretch actually saves me from my own personal tendency, which is to squash things flat. I'd rather, for this model, I'd rather have it stretched vertically than compressed vertically. So I'm going to go ahead and roll with what I've got. All right, and I'm going to do a little bit of that blocking in. If you remember way back, I'm thinking about that sort of Loomis construction, sort of where's the eye line, where's my center line. In this model, I'm seeing just a little bit more, and you can tell by the ears. The ears are what I check this by. I can see a little more of the left side of the face than the right side of the face. Oh, for you, it's opposite. I've got things flipped, so I'm not really right-handed, I'm left-handed. I can see a little bit more of the light side of the face, and the dark side of the face is a little bit thinner. And I can see the ear on that side showing a little bit more clearly, and the other ear is kind of hidden. That's how I can tell the head is tilted. Even though it looks like I'm seeing it straight on, there is a little bit of tilt there, so I'm going to remember that. Let's see. Boom, boom. All right, about halfway, chin to top of head, about where that eye line is. Brow line is up above that. I'm just going to remind myself that. There's ever so slight a tilt. This head is not perfectly straight up and down. There's ever so slight tilt going on. I want that. Any tilt I see, I'm going to go for, because there's such a tendency to straighten and make things perfectly vertical and perfectly symmetrical. So there's a tiny tilt and a tiny turn. I'm going to make sure and give myself that. I'm going to do a little bit of what's called the Riley method here. It's like borrowing a tiny bit. I've gone more in depth in that in class in the past, doing like Riley rhythms and things through the head. It gets a little formulaic, and so I'm just going to kind of borrow an idea from it, which is sort of the relationship of the eyes across the distance of the face. And this is all just me mapping this stuff out. Let's see, one eye follows the rule. So one eye width is the start of the other eye. So you get like the width of one eye, that width of the eye is the space between both eyes, and then you have the width of the other eye, which is presumably reasonably same size as the other one. That's not always the case. Sometimes when the head is in an extreme angle, like not quite profile, but maybe 3/4, that back eye will be smaller than the front eye. It's further away for one, and it's on a curved surface, it's a slightly different angle. But for now, I'm going to go with that. just going to define roughly where the corners of my eyes are. And I don't know, Thelma, maybe you can tell me in the chat, or whoever's in there, Max, let me know. Do you see anything on my page yet, on my gray page that I'm drawing? Or is it just a very, very faint image still? And again, as I said before, I'm keeping this really, really light-handed. I really don't want to push. I'm borrowing this contour that I'm on right now directly from the skull. There's that, I can see it on my own head right here. There's a just bony juts top corner of each eye. That's just bone. And so this model, I see it as this contour right here. And it kind of gets thinner into the corner of the eye. And then out from behind that, I get that cheekbone. Okay, thanks, Thelma, for that. As long as you can track what I'm up to more or less. It'll get clearer when I start laying down the pastel. I've got some plainer stuff happening. I'm going to find the nose. So I'm going to take the corners of the eyes that I've got here. And I'm going to do a real quick check. If I go width of that eye, heads out to the ear, width of this eye. I've got this still either a little bit wide, or I've got that eye, I think my eyes are just a little bit close together. Move them apart just a tad. And then this could come in as well. All right, if I go corner of the eyes, so I'm just going to check distance. I'm going to check a couple of distances here. I'm going to look from outside corner to outside corner of eye and just kind of see what it is distance-wise. Then I'm going to try and make a triangle from that point to that point down to the nose and see where does that nose need to be. So if I go corner to eye from the chin, that puts me just below the eyes, so there. So corner to eye. I need a longer implement to measure with. Just scoot back further. Corner to eye. Yeah, I think I've got my eyes far too close together. Oh, this is such an imprecise way of doing that. Okay. So angle from eye to nose is like this. If I just made this triangle outright, Is that more or less the triangle that I have there? It's pretty close. Turn this on silent. Right, so now I'm just going to do a little planer thing in the nose. I'm going to start with the outer wings here, so it's almost like right here where that flat plane of the nose turns out to the front plane of the face. And then another one up in here where the front of the nose kind of tapers. Same on the other side. I'm not going to be terribly married to this information. When I start putting the pastel down, I'm going to retain the option of shifting things around. This is going to give me a good start. Little hint at where the eyebrows go. Bring this stuff down just a little bit. This model has a really nice sort of diamond shape underneath the nose. One facial measurement that's a common measurement put out there as something to do faces by is that from the center of the eyeballs down, you'll hit the corners of the mouth. I would always double check that that's actually what you're seeing. And in this case, it kind of is what I'm seeing on this model. So I'm going to say corner of the mouth happening along this line and along that line. Kind of triangulating out again. So maybe there's the upper part of that lip. That's a plane change. So top shelf of lip turns into the underside of the lip. A little bit of dip down here. Right, and she's not just a mouth. There's like a little hook happening there. There's a shift. If I come straight off this nose, there's a shadow on this side, but there's also kind of a planar shift right there. So I'm going to make sure that makes an appearance. Same on the other side. It's what's giving us that little dark spot. Underneath the bottom lip, there's a return, sort of an under cut. It's going to kind of structure in some of these lines. Keeping everything really plain or really straight lined right now. All right, I'm just about done with this pencil. All right, I'm going to go ahead and leave off with that. All right, so now that I've got that down, I can start doing I'm going to start. And where do I see it mostly? I definitely see it down through the nose, through that eye, across this cheek, almost all the way down where where things are shifting into shadow. Definitely in the lips, down in the chest as well. Strange because I have sort of greens and yellows out to the side as well. All right, and I'm going to use this magenta also as kind of a contouring thing. So I'm going to firm up some of the decisions that I made in that other pencil. And that should start showing up on your screen a little bit better as well, I think. Oh yeah, Thelma, can you verify whether did that happen for you at all? Glitching, skipping stuff? I'm not just going over, just to give you a heads up, or just to talk about what I'm up to right here. I'm not necessarily just going over now what I've already done with a firmer line. I'm still making adjustments if I feel like something's a little bit out. Like I felt like this was a little bit off, maybe still is. So I'm leaving myself open to making adjustments to the sizes of things, the spacing of things. feel like there's something a little too masculine about this chin. I'll do a real quick measurement. It's the same. So the light shape of the chin goes from that light shape up to this. Yeah, I think I've got this part of the chin. Well, let's swipe this in. I feel like that's a little too big distance-wise down here. So I'm going to go corner of mouth, edge of chin. Yeah, I think the original pencil drawing just came a little too far down. Gave that chin a little too much, I don't know what to call it, a little too much oomph. A little too much stoutness. I'm going to, before I run the risk of going too all out on this magenta, I'm going to just a little bit on this eye and then switch up some colors. All right, let's see. This part always gets me because it always feels like a Christmas drawing if I start with this green, but I'm going to anyway. Just in some of this magenta. Ooh, Tatiana, you want a step-by-step video on how to make the art bench? Because the truth is I cobbled it together from pieces. Did you see the post on the pages section that has the at least the plans for it, like the measurements and kind of what it's made out of? I'm trying to think about how the best way to like film or record something like that would be, what the best way to do that is. I will have to give that some thought. All right, so right now I'm just looking for excuses to use this green as kind of a foil or a counterbalance to the magenta that's everywhere, but I do not want it to stay in this Christmassy green range. I'm kind of like, this is planned for the future time. Like there's going to be blue in here. There's going to be, okay, yeah, Tatiana, check that out. If you know anybody that's handy, you can give them those plans and say, hey, could you create this with these dimensions? And if they've got tools and some know-how, it shouldn't be too tough of a thing to do. Sorry, I'm not more helpful than that on that one, but And I'm going to grab my other green. So that was the grass green. I'm going to grab my other green. For some reason, to me, I see a lot of green, and maybe it's the influence of the background on the figure as well. But I see a lot of reasons for green. So I'm gonna go ahead with that idea, and then I will come back with more naturalistic colors after. So I'm still thinking planar right now. I'm still thinking of the different shifts that I can see, at least generally. The different planes of the face. It's a good time to mention that idea of trusting yourself, because right now it would be very tempting for me to go, "Gah, there's no way that this is going to work out. It's just looking like a cadaverous mess." And yet, I know the decisions I'm making are based on observation, at least loosely. So I know that it's going to end up, everything's going to be okay. Yes. I'm going to switch back to this grass green for a second. Yeah, it's too stark. Whites of the eyes are not white. Like if I look at this image, like if you really zoom in, look at the reflections, look at the highlight on the tip of the nose, look at the little pool of light. If you look at the whites of the eyes, where the wet of the eye, like the little reflection that the light is grabbing down right where the lid meets the eye, that is white or close to it. The actual white of the eye, in this image, I'm seeing blues and browns. I'm seeing greens. There's all kinds of not white happening in that eye. And we saw that in the other image as well. It looks, I'm looking out on the wall, the whites of the eyes look like whites of eyes, but they set back underneath the skin, back, often in shadow or close to it. And you want that to be happening in the drawing as well. You want the whites of the eyes to be nesting back in where they belong, which is up underneath. Kind of in the shadow, in the darks. And if you make them white, they're going to scream right out of their sockets. Same goes for teeth. Like this model, I can see her teeth. If you look through the lips, I can see teeth. There is not a chance, nowhere in any universe, that I'm going to be using white on those teeth. No way. If I compare them to the highlight on the nose, they're not even close. They're not even in the same neighborhood. So what I'll do is darken the stuff around them and hint at the teeth, but there will be no white involved. Whites of the eyes. If you have someone with their eyes wide open and the light's shining onto their eyes, you'll see like the wetness of the eye, the reflection, the highlight there, white makes sense there. But for the entirety of the eye, it's just too strong. I think I'm going to go for it on these greens. And I'm going to do some of my modeling of the form and stuff in just the greens. Maybe yellow. Get analogous with it. So maybe out here. Yeah, I'll probably throw some yellow for some of the lighter stuff out here. This is not unlike an Italian painting trick called verdaccio, which is to paint in green. You sort of paint your models, you sort of render out the skin in green shades of green ahead of time. And then you come back over that with your flesh colors and you get that bounce back and forth of green, magenta. If you're mixing your skin tones on top of a green, chances are you won't go too far in the pink range and you'll get a lot more of this, of the dancing warm and cool effect. It's like a balance against all the magenta pinks and such you're going to be using. Yeah, I think one of the worst things that ever happened was for whites of eyes to be called whites of eyes. Made it hard on all of us poor artists. The nice thing about these greens is I can overshoot with the dark green, and then I can bring the light green back and kind of just work that into it. And I get a nice, with just those two, I get a nice kind of rounding of the form. I think I might play that. I'm going to play that game around the core shadow. Or like right at the halftone edge. I hope you're not coming to these lessons looking for a step-by-step, like here's how you do it every time, because that's just, for better or worse, I just don't work that way. I'm much more of like a breadcrumb trail follower. Like I'll try to see what the drawing is doing. I value having like an arsenal of tools or approaches or sort of ways of thinking about what you're doing at your disposal, and then using one or some or whatever makes sense to do in the context. I think it's potentially dangerous to follow a formulaic kind of step-by-step process. Renee's Art Studio. Hi, Renee's Art Studio. I don't know if that's a Renee that I know. Oh, I guess not. I'm getting some interesting, this yellow green with that magenta is giving me some interesting orange right there. Kind of quite like that. I'm going to overshoot that nose and then bring it back. Yeah, sorry, Renee's Art Studio. This is a class session that I'm holding, so the students will ask questions and be part of the comments. You're welcome to watch and stuff, but just so as not to have non-class members filling up the chat. Sorry if that's draconian. So Tatiana, for the shading on the face, will I go with the black, like at all with the nose or something? Not unless I absolutely have to. So if I push the values to the point where I've kind of darkened things so much that I can't get the detail that I want, that I'm after, then I'll bring black in, but I'll bring it in very kind of cautiously because of its tendency to kill color. I'll only bring it in just for like little hits of the deepest shadow, and often then, and this is kind of my preferred thing to do with it, often then I will add little hits of blue next to it, little hits of red, like this magenta stick, stuff like that, to just to mask the fact that it's black. You know, I really don't want the black to be doing any heavy lifting at all. And that's based on context too a lot of times. I mean, I say that out of one side of my mouth, and out of the other you may see me do exactly the opposite of what I just said and use a lot of black. It depends on what the image is like, I guess, what it's calling for. It's easy to get into trouble with black because it's we're used to it with charcoal, I think. And so we tend to overuse it for things like shadow. And when you're working with color, it's better to think of pretty much everything that you're doing in terms of color and not in terms, I don't want to say it like that because that was almost sacrilege. You definitely want to think about value. I was about to say instead of thinking about value, but I realized that's not what I mean to say. What I mean to say is you should be thinking about value, but you should be thinking about appropriate colors for that value instead of resorting to the old trusty black. I may come into the hair with it because the hair is so black or so dark. I mean, it's really tempting to go, oh, hair, dark, black. But I've got other dark sticks that are full of color, and maybe they're a better use. You know, maybe it's better to use them to get at my darks. Then I can make decisions like, okay, I've got a lot of magenta or orange or yellow or whatever's going on in the face. And I can say, all right, then hair, you might get black may be part of the answer to the hair, but maybe like blue gets to be part of that conversation. So like a blue and an orange, and then back to the blue. That may be a way more satisfying dark neutral than black ever will be. Or if I bring black in just as a example, you can kind of see what it's. If I bring black in, it has killed the blue, but there's still blue floating around in that black and the brown that I put this orange. So right now I have this sort of triple layer of these three, like black, this dark neutral orange, and dark blue. I've got a sort of triple layer of that going on, and my own personal opinion here is that it would work better if I came back with one more blue pass. And just knock that black back a little bit. Right, so you may find me doing stuff like that in the shadows as well, kind of like a push pull layer in and out thing. Right, I'm going to bring some yellow into this in just these lightest spots. Bring back some of this cheek structure. It's kind of warming up that side as well. Ooh, there's some yellow. So you'll notice right now I'm kind of like the normal method of like mixing towards the color that I'm seeing is kind of taking a back seat to, I mean, I'm doing that with the green that I felt like I saw everywhere, but it's a lot less stark than I've done it here. But I'm working my values now, and I'll come back and sort of influence this green once I get more of the value structure down. But I'm using colors to deal with the values rather than like black and white. And so the drawing will stay fresher maybe. More vibrant in color. So Tatiana, yeah, thinking of value in color and with a generic or kind of general plan involved as well. So like my plan here is the green that I saw everywhere on my magenta gesture, which I do see magenta in this figure. I also see green out of the face, so I'm kind of magenta greening it, and I've kind of pushed it too far both of those directions. With the idea that I can come back and adjust these colors. It's easier to neutralize colors it's easier for me to neutralize colors that are too intense than to try and bring back life into colors that have gotten too grungy, particularly when you get black involved. I forgot to put down my little pad. I have this piece of a yoga mat that I cut apart. I just set it right down here in this little front area. That way it can catch my falling pastels and save them from death. The nice thing about this approach for me is that it's got me less worried about color right now. Like I can focus on the values in a way that's keeping the color alive without worrying about all of the different colors I have to match. As long as I trust that I can come back I've got some reckoning to do with this shadow. I don't quite like what it's up to, but I'm going to work a little bit more of this first before I go dealing with that. All right, let's see. get sucked into the detail there too soon. One thing I want to point out too, you saw me do at the start of this drawing, starting the drawing with in pencil, mapping things out and then going in with the pastel. At this point, that is a perfectly valid thing to be doing, right? The idea now is that you're, at this point in your drawings, my hope is, the idea is that you're not afraid to swipe in shadow where it's needed or color where it's needed. But if you need to get structure in the drawing, if you need to get proportion and stuff worked out in the drawing, by all means, use the tools available to you in as far as measuring and pencil and line work and stuff is concerned. First, just don't treat it like a coloring book where you do the drawing and then you color it in with all the skin colors, whatever those might be. Right, show that you've got a little, let that adventuresome spirit out and swipe in a color area or two. All right, I'm going to give myself some context here. So here's my plan going forward is to work this shadow edge. I'm happy with what the light is doing so far. I'm going to work this shadow edge to give myself a little more clarity in the light to shadow situation. I'm going to frame in, I'm going to do this black, blue, brown thing sort of in a little more framing way. And then I'm going to bring some of that back into the darker parts of the face as well. This same sort of brown, black, blue, maybe just the brown, blue in most spots, maybe the black, to help kind of unite those things together. And in fact, it might make sense to add a bit of green. Unless you're doing it for stylistic reasons, it may not be the best idea to have your hair one entire set of colors and your face one entire other set of colors. All right, something to think about. All right, so blue. So a little bit. Tomorrow, by the way, incidentally, since we're talking, tomorrow is the last day that we are going to be focusing on and talking about this kind of natural color balancing. Starting next week, we are going to move into more expressive uses of color. So we'll be saying goodbye to the natural, trying to make it feel like skin feels. And instead, we'll be making bold choices about color. This dark blue from the 12 pack is really nice. It's one of my favorite colors. Ooh, something out. This cheekbone is way too far out. Ooh, did I fall prey? Ooh, I hope I did. Let's see. Yeah. So if I go from cheekbone to nose It's the exact same size. So remember at the first I was like, I see more of this light side and less of this dark side. Well, my brain was like, you say that, but that's actually incorrect. They are exactly the same. And so I've made them exactly the same. That is not correct. So I'm going to shave off a good chunk of this side here because I've been sabotaged by the brain. Yes, Thelma, I would agree with you there. Adding some sense of frame, some sense of background, some sense of context, something like that is definitely going to up your color game in the face. The gray paper helps, so it saves you from the white paper, all the problems of having white paper, which is that things are just too stark. You don't have any context for what you're doing. But I find at some point laying in these blocks, like nothing is headed towards natural yet. I'm just working the values kind of as sensitively as I can manage, I guess. But when I go to start mixing here, when I have all this blue here and potentially even some background behind the figure, behind the head, it's going to help me here because I'll constantly be seeing the full context. So yes, you're totally right there. Have to be brave, Caleb. You got to go. If I shave too much of this off, which I may have just done, I'm not going to stress about it. Yeah, I did just do so good. So there, I took myself away from being symmetrical. This is a good point to bring this up too, because I think a lot of times you're like, oh no, I just cut that way too thin. I'm going to run a measurement just to make sure, because I don't actually know that's the case. If I go center of nose to cheekbone, goes plain from there to there, so center of nose to cheekbone. So according to my drawing, this is still okay. What about down here, like maybe corner of mouth to the edge there? It's slightly shorter than that. So I may have shaved this in too tight, but that's okay because things are relatively nondescript back there. So I can just add, this edge is quite adjustable still. Like where should I put the edge of that face? I can really I can push and pull with both of this, blue and green. I can push and pull that until I'm happy with where things are. It's at this point that I'm really seeing that stretch that I was talking about before, and my instinct is to try and fix it, but I think I'm going to leave it. All right. There's something about that, again, something about that blue that I quite like. Sorry, blue though, you need to relax. This kind of thing is what will have your drawing. So you've laid down the blue, neutralizing it with an orange, going to come back and redarken it with a black, and then bring the blue back into it with the blue. That kind of layering, provided you're not doing it willy-nilly, like just randomly grabbing colors and doing whatever. If there's an organizing principle to why you're doing it, it will have the effect of looking like, so from a distance you'll have that dark brown, maybe, really dark black feel. But then from up close, it'll break apart into like, you'll see the layer of blue, you'll see the orange in there, you'll see you'll see those colors separately, and it'll be like, why would you, what would ever possess you to select that color or whatever? And it's just it's way more rewarding to see. And I'm going to swipe a little green here and there just to have little hints of what's going on in the face. It'll seem like it was always meant to be. Right, I'm by no means done with this hair, but I've got kind of the blue, I've got the color variety in it that I'm, at least a start on it. Bring some of this back. So here's some of that stuff has gotten into the face. Whatever, I'm not too worried about it. All right, I'm going to tighten up some of these darks. And then I think maybe I'll start putting in some more naturalistic colors. I think I want to focus this. I want to bring back that shadow edge. So I'm going to kind of highlight that and focus on that for a moment. I think I'm going to pull something from beginning. Don't let my big old face block the view. If I get too excited about drawing, I will block the view with my face. I just noticed I didn't like the shape over here, so I'm going to give that a little more turn by darkening that edge. Even though in the image it's not as much. I'm going to take a page from the beginning class and I'm just going to draw this shadow shape in. All right, I'm going to call that for the green so far. I kind of like what the magenta and green are doing around the eyes here and there. It's kind of nice. I'm going to keep magenta in my back pocket. For now, I'm going to come in and grab some of this darker stuff, and I'm going to do it with the blue that I used out here in the hair. Just because I know the blue is significantly darker than the green, but it's not black yet. It's not going to kill color, it's going to add color. It's kind of it's analogous to the green. So if you're on a color wheel, you have your green, step this way, you're stepping towards blue, right? Rather than neutralizing towards black. I don't know if that made sense, but it made sense to me when I said it. So this blue is going to be my deep shadow and to an extent my core shadow as well. So it's going to bring some of that detail back. And I may find that this is all I need. That I don't need black at all. And it's always my secret hope that I will get to the end of a drawing having never used black. This nostril is shaped strange. All right. It's kind of light work with this pencil. This pastel. I'm kind of hatching things in. Just keeping like this hatch going. See, it may be by the time I'm done adding the darks that the white of the eye just looks white because of the darks that I've already used. All right, another secret hope of mine. I think I've got this model looking about twice as bored as the reference photo. It's all right. This is where that stuff we cover in beginning, so the straight line gesture, straight line block in, all of that stuff, it comes out and it comes in handy too. I'll say, like, I'm using the straight line block in idea, the light shadow edge idea. I'm using those concepts from beginning extensively right now to inform what I'm doing And sometimes just outright using the approach when it comes to like drawing in a shadow shape and filling it in, or resorting to that straight line block in line work again. Um, to me, one, I guess, class doesn't really replace the other. It's just adding. So in the intermediate class, you've got all that stuff from beginning as far as like proportions and keeping stuff in check, and you should kind of always be continuing to work those skills and hone those skills. You just add to it an understanding of color and a willingness to swipe things in and be gestural and bold with how you treat it. You've got the sticks that make marks for you. They sort of work with you instead of against you as much. So it's very much a continuation. Let's get this core shadow in. This stick is a triangle by now, and it's really hard to keep hold of. You may notice that when you wear yours down to a triangle, it can be tough to grip them. I notice that chin is it's quite a bit in focus and the background's not, so I'm going to give the chin just a little bit of line. And I'm going to grow that line upwards just a tad so it's not so much of a line. Take some of this green and kind of bring that chin forward a tad. All right, let's get some color. What is it? We got 15 minutes. There's no way in a million years I'm going to finish this in 15 minutes, but we can get a start. There's a swipe of black for some volume. I don't feel quite as bad about killing the color in hair as in skin, because hair's dead anyway, right? I don't know, I might still bring some red in just to liven things up, but I kind of want the contrast here that I see in the image. Tatiana, there's that black, but it's got the brown and the blue sort of, couched in there with it. So it's not all by itself, really. There may be call for throwing a little bit of, a little bit of magenta in here and there. I don't know. All right, let me get to some more of the natural colors here. I'm relatively satisfied with what I'm seeing. So I'm going to come into here I'm just looking for places to take the green out. Again, not everywhere. Just here and there, I would say. And I'm going to ask myself questions about the warm stuff I see. Does it call for magenta? Or should I neutralize it a little more with this orange stick? I kind of like the magenta up here. Also my hands are a wreck, but that's all right. So this This is immediately going to start bringing a skin feel. Right, this is just the magenta stick right now, but it's doing a pretty good job of getting neutralized by the greens that are down. So it's going to give me a reasonably good skin tone that bounces between magenta and green and blue. I'm going to use the magenta around this nose a little bit more. Especially right there. And if I feel like it goes too far like that, like I'm like, ooh, I darkened that quite a bit. I can lighten it back up, and I'm not with white. This is that yellow stick. I'll be bringing white through here in a while, but not yet. So I'm kind of like magenta and yellow right now in the skin tones. This whole side, I feel like there's a little hit of magenta that runs down that shadow edge. Maybe a little bit of orange to it. And some yellow. And I think for this drawing, given the class time, I'm just going to let this shadow stay this blue and green. It's quite blue and quite green, but I could darken it. Like I could come in with this orange and neutralize that blue in the shadow and do some more blue and kind of integrate those, and basically the same thing I'm doing in the light. But for time, I'm just going to let it be. Yeah, my drawing is much more tired than the actual model. All right, so this is white, but this is like an off-white. I don't have the, I think this is the white from the 12 color pack. And I think my inclination here is not to go straight for the white from the 12 color pack. I think I'm going to reach in to my pack O colors and get something that's going to act like white but is not full white. This is like a flesh, sort of peachy color. And it's going to give me lights without going the full strength of the white stick. Because I don't really want that right now. Looking for moments of clarity, moments of detail, moments of like hits of light that I can play with to help further add some dimension to this. And I'm going to save the white for I'm going to prioritize at the end, like what are my most impactful, my strongest lights. I'll let the white do that. There's a plane shift in a cheek usually right here, like it rolls down and then it comes back out again in the jaw. So this little darkening U shape, I'm going to leave that because that gives you some contour there that I can see an excuse for it in the reference image, but it's not super clear. I'm going to make it a little clearer in the drawing. And I don't really feel bad about swiping this same color all over in the lights because I've kind of already laid the groundwork for the colors to be different enough to not feel dead. Right? I don't feel like it's going to look like that color has just been overused everywhere. It's going to hopefully it's got sort of this pink magenta nature of its own. Hopefully that plays ball with the other things that are down. I see some lavenders in there, which would be sweet. It's darker over here, so I don't want to go with that color so much. So I'm going to bring the magenta into this light shape, set it apart from the shadow shape next to it. That was magenta, but I feel like I did a little too much magenta, but I don't really want to go green. I think I'm going to bring some violet into it. I'm seeing some reasons to use violet around here, so I think I'm going to. And I know I've got yellow in this image already, so I don't even feel that bad about throwing some violet in. Especially over here. Have to be careful because the violet is the same value as the darker green. Yeah, I'm going to come back and fix that light just a little bit. Or else maybe a touch right there. This is light green. I'm going to see if I can knock back some of the darkness of that violet. Just noticing there's some shadow right here that I want to get. Then I'm going to take some magenta into the lips. I'm going to pump up some of this magenta in the lips. So by pressing, when I was swiping it really carefully, it was mixing with the greens and stuff that were down and staying rather neutral. If I press very much at all, it's going to reassert its magenta-ness, which I'm okay with here and there. Maybe just a few hits of light through here. Right now it looks like the mouth is closed. All it's going to take to open it is to just make this a little bit wider. And maybe I could come in and a little bit of black there and here and into there. A little bit of, I'm just going to swipe magenta over all of that, just like a hatch, so it's not too bold. Oh, I see a little light hit right here I missed. I think I'm going to take this blue. This is similar to what I did in the figure on the black paper. Oh, we're over time. I'm going to take a little bit of that blue. A little bit of that dead brown. Then I'm going to bring some of this skin tone I was just using back. For the whites of the eyes. Again, not white. I think the blue, I'm going to shift them a little less. Yeah, that's better. I realize the color reproduction on my camera is not great. So a lot of this, like maybe the nuances get lost a little bit, but all right, just to wrap things up, I'm going to come in with some white and grab some of the shiny spots and some of the high detail in the lights at least. And I'd be carrying on with this process for a goodly while. But just to give you an idea of where it might go. All right, and heck, just for the fun of it, I've got some gray, and then we will call it. I'm going to come through and just carve a little bit of background in. Maybe change the shape of that hair a tad. It's a little bit lighter gray than the paper, but God, I need to avoid blowing charcoal dust over all over my computer. All right, I'm going to stop it there, folks. So we didn't finish, but we're artists, so we have no idea what finished even means anyway. So this process of heading away from the green and more towards the natural skin tones, particularly over here. So in the shadow side of this, it's still quite green. Even in the light side, quite a lot of green still. If I continue layering these colors on to the figure, it will take more and more and more, it will take on more and more and more natural skin colors. And the idea here too is believable skin that shows a sensitivity towards the balance of colors that you get in real skin. So for the magenta, where's the green? For the yellow, where's the violet? how are you balancing these out? And they don't have to go to the extremes of those colors, but just how are you balancing your colors to hint at or give a sense of the actual skin that you're seeing. All right. Thank you all. I will see you tomorrow. What's today? Wednesday. Tomorrow morning, our last head drawing. I'll post up that image as soon as I decide which one we're going to be doing. If you have, I'll just throw this out there as well. If you have references or images that you'd like to draw that you think would make a good reference, I'm open to having you suggest the reference photo, and if it's in line and seems reasonable with what we're doing and of reasonable quality, I'm okay with using it. So if you feel strongly, you can. But did I already upload the reference? I think if I didn't, I'll be doing it right now. I thought I did before class, but I may not have. So I will check that. Thelma, thank you for asking. All right, and then, yeah, so if there's no other questions, I'll close it down. We don't have the Zoom session right after this. Normally we do right after class have a Zoom session for any questions or whatever. I'm going to post this image if I haven't already and do some grading and stuff. So otherwise, I'll see you tomorrow morning. See y'all.